My name is Hazel Brooks, and at 11 years old, I learned that food was a luxury. That July, my parents announced they were going to Europe for a month. Paris, Rome, Santorini. They placed two $10 bills and a credit card on the kitchen table, told me it was for emergencies, then dragged their suitcases out the door without looking back. I didn't know the card had never been activated. I also didn't know that 30 days later, when they returned and threw a welcome home party for 40 guests, the police would walk into our living room. But that's the ending. Let me tell you how it started. The Brooks family lived in a two-story house in suburban Denver. The front lawn was perfectly trimmed. Two cars sat in the garage. Everything was beautiful. Everything was in its place. My mother, Diane Brooks, had 12,000 followers on Instagram. She posted family photos every week. Sunday dinners, weekend getaways, Christmas trees. Blessed, she'd write. So grateful for my little family. But if you looked closely, you'd notice something. I was rarely in those photos. My father, Greg Brooks, worked long hours at an insurance company. He came home at 7, ate dinner, watched the news, went to bed. He wasn't a bad person, he just wasn't present. I'd learned to take care of myself early, making my own breakfast since I was 8, walking to school alone, signing permission slips when Mom forgot. She called me the quiet one in front of guests. Hazel doesn't need much attention, she'd say with a light laugh. She likes being alone, right, sweetheart? She never waited for an answer. I would nod because if I didn't, Mom would sigh like I'd just ruined her entire day. I was used to being invisible. I thought it was normal. I thought every kid existed on the margins of their parents' lives, trying not to be a bother, trying to be good enough to be loved. But I never thought they would actually disappear. 2 weeks before they left, Mom called me downstairs. She was sitting on the couch, laptop open, the screen showing a flight booking website. Dad stood by the window, staring at the yard, saying nothing. Hazel, Mom said, her voice light, as if announcing what was for dinner. Your father and I need a break. A month in Europe. Paris, Rome, Greece. You're 11 now, old enough to stay home. I stood frozen. Who will I stay with? I asked. Mom didn't look up. You'll stay alone. Don't be dramatic. You know how to take care of yourself. I looked at Dad. He was still facing the window, his back to me. She placed two $10 bills and a silver plastic card on the table, $20 for snacks, and this card is for emergencies only. Don't use it unless the house is on fire. Then she turned back to her laptop. Flights Monday morning. We'll be back in exactly 1 month. I picked up the money and the card and walked upstairs. I didn't know that credit card had never been activated. Monday morning, I stood at the door and watched them leave. Mom wore a floral dress, hair freshly done, pulling a brown designer suitcase. Dad loaded the bags into the Uber. Remember to lock up, Mom said without turning around. They got in the car. The car pulled away and disappeared around the corner. I stood at the door for 5 more minutes, as if they might come back and say it was all a joke. They didn't. That first night, the house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming and the clock on the wall. The next morning, I opened the refrigerator. Nearly empty. Half a carton of milk, 4 eggs, a loaf of bread, 2 days past its expiration date, some jars of tomato sauce. I counted my money. $20. 30 days. That's 66 cents a day. Day 3. I walked to the grocery store and stood in the aisle calculating every cent. Ramen noodles, 79 cents a pack. White bread, $1.29. Peanut butter, $2.99. Peanut butter, $2.99. I bought 6 packs of ramen and a loaf of bread with my first $10. Back home, I rationed the ramen. 1 pack split into 2 meals, half for breakfast, half for dinner. Day 5, I called Mom. 3 rings. 4. 5. Hello. Her voice was distant, music playing in the background. Mom, the credit card doesn't work. I don't have money for food. She sighed. You're being dramatic again, Hazel. You have $20. You can eat less. Click. She hung up. That night, I opened her Instagram. New post. Mom standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, beaming, holding a glass of champagne. Caption, Paris living. Living my best life. 123 likes. I grabbed the old iPad Mom had given me, the one she didn't need after buying a new one. I opened a camera and hit record. Today is day 5, I said, voice shaking. Mom posted a photo from a Michelin star restaurant. I ate half a pack of ramen. Day 7, a neighbor knocked on my door. Mr. Walter lived in the blue house next to ours. 70 years old, widower, lived alone with an old cat. He'd wave at me when I walked to school. But we'd never really talked. He looked me up and down. I noticed your parents' cars haven't been around. Everything okay? I wanted to lie, but I was too tired, too hungry. My lips were cracked. My face was pale. Would you like to come over for dinner? He asked. I made too much. Hate to see it go to waste. I knew he was lying. He lived alone, but I was too hungry to refuse. That evening I sat at his kitchen table and ate spaghetti like I'd never eaten before. Afterward, he asked where my parents really were, and I told him everything. Europe. 1 month. $20. The card that didn't work. Mr. Walter was silent for a long time. I won't call anyone yet, he said quietly. But I'm going to bring you food every day, and if you need to document anything, you write it down. Sometimes evidence is what protects you. Week 2, summer school started. Mom had signed me up months ago, not because she wanted me to learn, but because she needed me somewhere so no one would ask questions. First day I arrived late. Clothes wrinkled. I didn't know how to use the washing machine. Hair tangled. Dark circles under my eyes. My teacher, Mrs. Caldwell, watched me walk in. Hazel, are you feeling all right? Day 3 at school, I nearly fainted during math. When I woke up, I was lying on the nurse's office bed. Did you eat breakfast this morning? The nurse asked. Yes. Half a pack of ramen, 6 hours ago. She put me on a scale. You've lost 9 pounds in 2 weeks, she said. Where are your parents? I looked down at my hands. Thin, pale. No one, I said. The nurse and Mrs. Caldwell exchanged a look. I'm not going to pretend I don't see what I see, Mrs. Caldwell said quietly. I didn't cry. I'd forgotten how. But for the first time in 2 weeks, I felt like someone actually saw me. That night, Mom called. I heard the school called. What did you tell them? Nothing. You're being dramatic again, she shouted. You have money, you have food, and you still find ways to embarrass me. Then she dropped her voice, colder now. If you tell anyone, the school, the neighbors, anyone, I will send you to boarding school when I get back. You won't live at home anymore, understand? I said yes and hung up. My hands were shaking. I opened the iPad and hit record. Mom just called, I said, voice hollow. She threatened to send me to boarding school if I tell anyone. I'm not being dramatic. I'm starving and she doesn't care. That night I decided that if no one would believe me, I would create evidence that made it impossible not to. Every morning I filmed the empty refrigerator, read Mom's emails aloud on camera, stepped on the bathroom scale. I kept a written journal too. Day 19, ate 1 egg and half a pack of ramen. Mom posted a photo eating oysters in Monaco. I'm living a nightmare. Day 20, stomach hurt all day. No food left. Mr. Walter brought a sandwich. On day 22, a CPS caseworker named Miss Briem, Clara, arrived at my door. She was calm, professional, and kind. She stepped inside and her eyes moved slowly around the house. Can I see the kitchen? She opened the refrigerator, looked at the trash, empty ramen wrappers. Then she looked at me. Do you have anything you want to show me? I went to my room and came back with the iPad. I've been recording, I said. Every day. In case no one believed me. Miss Clara pressed play. When it ended, she looked at me. You're very brave, Hazel. These videos are important. Then she asked a question no one had ever asked before. Do you want to be safe? For the first time, I said it out loud. Yes. The evidence was overwhelming. 22 videos. The school's medical report. Mom's threatening emails. And the credit card statements Ms. Clara obtained through legal subpoena. My parents had spent $47,000 in Europe. 5-star hotels, Michelin star restaurants, designer shopping in Milan. The supplementary card they left me had never been activated. Not a single transaction, because it couldn't be used. They left an 11-year-old with $20 for a month and knew exactly what they were doing. Mom had planned a welcome home party. 40 guests. A slideshow of Europe photos playing on the TV. She stood in a new Milan dress, working the room, laughing, performing. She didn't know I wasn't upstairs resting. She didn't know I wasn't even in the house. When the doorbell rang, she opened the door with a smile already on her face. Miss Clara stood on the porch with two uniformed officers behind her. Mom tried to close the door. "We have a warrant," the officer said. "You and your husband are being charged with child endangerment." Someone in the crowd gasped. The champagne glasses stopped clinking. Then the TV changed. My face, my voice. "Today is day 15. The refrigerator has one egg and expired milk. I have $3 left. Mom is in Monaco." The room went completely silent. 40 people stood frozen, watching Diane Brooks, the woman who had just shown them her Santorini sunset photos, being read her rights. Mom spun toward her guests. "This is a misunderstanding. She's an imaginative child. She makes things up." But Miss Clara opened her folder. "There was no babysitter. No one visited your daughter for 30 days. You spent $47,000 while she ate half a pack of ramen a day. No one in the room said a word. No one moved to defend her. They walked my parents out in handcuffs." Mom paused before getting in the police car and looked back at the house, at the welcome home banner still hanging in the window. Then the officer guided her in, and the car pulled away. Mom and Dad took a plea deal. 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and a permanent felony record. The judge revoked their parental rights permanently. "You chose a luxury vacation over your daughter's safety," the judge said. "This court cannot return this child to your care." My Aunt Claire, Mom's estranged sister, had already filed for guardianship. CPS approved it that same morning. I was officially hers. Life with Aunt Claire was different. Small apartment, mismatched plates, a couch that had seen better days. It was the warmest place I'd ever lived. She came to every basketball tryout. She wrote my school events on the kitchen calendar in purple marker. She sat across from me at dinner every night and actually listened when I talked. I kept waiting for her to get tired of me. She never did. I'm 18 now. College starts next week. Full scholarship, pre-law program, a future I built myself. On the day I packed my room, I found 2 letters in my desk drawer, both from Mom. I read them for the first time, sitting on my bed. She said she was in therapy. She said she was trying. She said she was proud of me, even though she had no right to be. I put them back in their envelopes. I didn't write back. Maybe someday I will, maybe not. But for the first time, it felt like my choice, and only my choice. My mother left me with $20 and a card that didn't work. She thought I'd be too scared, too obedient, too desperate for her love to ever speak up. She was wrong. I survived that month. I documented every day. I let the truth speak for itself. And when the consequences came, that wasn't revenge. It was just reality catching up. Silence doesn't protect you. It only protects the people who hurt you. If you grew up invisible, if you were taught that speaking up was betrayal, I want you to know, you are allowed to protect yourself, even from the people who were supposed to protect you first. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. And the people who love you will never ask you to starve for them.